Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of College Football UK. As ever, I am your host, and this podcast is brought to you by the AAW Network. Joining me, like he does every week, he's here before I am, he leaves after I do. It's Nick. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you very much.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm only here before you and stay after because I've got nothing better to do.
That's
So,
it. You like to think that I do. That's really nice.
you
That
know.
we'll leave people. We'll leave everybody with the idea that I do too. Um, Unfortunately, we were hoping to have Sam back this week, but he couldn't quite make it. Unfortunately, he's promised me he'll be back next week. I hope everyone will hold him to it. So make sure when we go into the house rules that you go follow Sam on social media and tell him he has to be here next week. Unfortunately, as we said last week, Gary cannot be here. It is no longer because he is other commitments, but now because he is so TikTok famous that we're no longer good enough for him. I don't think he'll ever come back, unfortunately. Gary was spotted this weekend at Silverstone. He does that every year. And Gary's gone viral, ladies and gentlemen. Gary has gone viral. Lando Norris might have placed first, but those who were sat in the Lando Norris stand were the true winners of Silverstone this weekend, who got treated to Gary bouncing around all day. Very, very jealous. But more importantly than the people who are not here, and the people who are now too good for us, is the other gentleman that is here. Returning guest, everybody's favourite guest, let's face it. We have Adam from CFBUK View. How are you, sir?
I'm very good, thanks, Fletch. Nick, good to see you both, and yeah, thanks for having me back on. Had such a good time last time. Thought we'd come and do it again. And Sam and Gary leaving the door open as well by not being here. It'd be rude not to take the opportunity to come along.
I know Nick and I secretly wish that they do it every week now if it means you get to come back.
Only your
Obviously,
words, not mine.
um, right, before we get into the main part of the episode, as always, I've got to go through the little bits of house information first. Now, if you are watching on YouTube, if you look below me, you will see a very handsome gentleman by the name of Adam from CFB UK View. Below him, you will see a description of the episode in this YouTube. If you go into the description of the episode, you will see a number of links in that description. One being to our Discord, which has just seen an uptake in members these last couple of days, as we've just announced a new project to the AAW Network, which has been really, really nice. Come and join us. Come and talk college football, NFL, Britball, UFL, other sports too. In this Discord, we'd love to have you in there. Also, come and follow the AAW Network on socials, follow the College Football UK on socials, and follow all of our wonderful, wonderful hosts, the ones who were here anyway. Follow them. Don't follow the ones who aren't here. They don't deserve it. And you can go follow our esteemed guest, who will properly introduce himself again in 1 second. This week, we also had the relaunch of our brand new website, where there will be now new articles going up every single day. And to start it off, I've done a little piece on the college football MacGuffin, which is my favorite little bit of college football trivia. I'm sure Nick, Garrett, and Sam, and the amount of episodes you probably listen to, you can all account for is the fact that that is my favorite little piece of college football trivia, is the college football MacGuffin. But enough about all of that. Adam, now we can call you Adam this week, by the way. Can you reintroduce yourselves for those who are brand new, for those who didn't quite catch you a couple of weeks ago on during our mini series? Reintroduce yourself, how you got into college football a little bit, and where we can find you.
Yes, sure. And yeah, that was my fault 2 weeks ago. You CFB UK View plastered over everything. I forgot to actually tell you my name, which was a bit unfortunate. But I've been a college football fan probably since about 2009 now, when I discovered ESPN America, that old channel that used to exist for my US sports. Signed up for baseball, stayed for the college football and the marching bands and whatnot. And it's been a slow love affair with college football ever since. Decided to pick up the keyboard and the laptop beginning of this year and start writing about college football. And been enjoying doing that ever since. Primarily talking about some of the basics. So thinking about a viewer who's been watching Sky Sports turns on a Saturday and finds instead of the normal football variety, he finds college football. And just thinking about college football in that context, I've lost Fletch.
It's okay. I'm still here.
All right.
There,
I'm still
okay,
here.
lost visuals. So I've been doing that. I've been very active on Twitter as well. CFB UK View. You can find me on Twitter. So doing medium size posts, tweets on that forum, and then using the blog for wider pieces. Mixture of the two. So that's primarily it. I think in the top right hand corner you can see the website College Football View, ukview.com, and on Twitter that's the other place you'll find me.
Yes, and also, actually, you'll be able to have the link to follow Adam over at CFB UK View on social media, but we'll also put the link into Adam's website as well in there. Now, if you want silly articles about things like the college football MacGuffin, come to me, come talk to me. But if you want actual in-depth things about things that are important in college football, that's the place you go to for that kind of thing. Okay, so thank you, by the way, for that as well. Nick, it's you.
Yes.
May we go to Nick's news, please?
We can. All the staff have been on holiday this week, so it's just been me on my own. So it's a solo effort this week. No Nick's News staff this week. They've all disappeared. We spoke last week about BYU and Jake Rasloff. They have announced in the Big 12 Media Day, which was yesterday.
Yes.
Yes, it was yesterday, wasn't it? Or Tuesday is when this comes out tomorrow. They've basically BYU have said their existing three quarterbacks, Trajan Borgenay, McCray Hillstead, and Bear Beckmeyer, they will be the guys going forward that will have an open competition as to who's going to start. Because, as we mentioned last week, Jake is likely to transfer out due to his 7-game suspension for breaking the honor code. They have no intention to bring a new QB in. So that's just something that's followed on from the media day yesterday, based on what we were talking about last week. Another bit of news relates to contract extension. PJ Fleck at Minnesota, he has had his contract extended by a year. He will get paid the same $6 million a year. No pay rise for PJ, but if you need a few quid, PJ's got $6 million a year just hanging around. And I picked up some articles on this coming season of college football, but ultimately, news-wise, that's all I've got for you, I'm afraid.
No worries, no worries. Well, I've got a couple of little bits. Over the weekend, it was the 4th of July, which I've had numerous reminders of, thanks to my American counterparts this week. You ungrateful colonials. However, this weekend is normally a massive weekend for the recruitment period. I've been a few 5-star commits this weekend. Felix Ojo has committed to Texas.
Yeah, Texas Tech.
This I'm gonna say I had them all noted down in the notes, but now I'm reading this off an article and it looks odd. It looks really odd. Calvin Russell, wide receiver, has committed to Florida. Jaire Edwards, safety, has committed to Maryland. So I need to get this up. I need to get them up properly in a minute. Bryce Perry Wright, someone I was very much interested in looking at over the weekend. He's committed to Georgia. And Chauncey Kennan has committed to Florida as a cornerback. Those are the 5-star commits that have gone on over the weekend. A weekend that saw over 150 commits, which is ridiculous when you think about it. That many commits over one weekend. I shouldn't have got them up on a really weird Forbes article. I should have just gone to On3 or 24/7. That was my bad. Um, but I wanted to just get up real quick. Right, come on. I'll get it up in a bit. But that has, I know I've seen Michigan skyrocket through the rankings for teams. Um, for the rankings of the classes. How are Oregon getting on in there?
Yeah, ticked up a couple of notches, I think, in the rankings as well. It's been reasonably decent couple of weeks on the recruiting front. A couple of big high profile recruits. Names escape me off the top of my head. But it's been steady. I think we probably always were going to see a bit of a surge post house settlement and then
Yeah.
post all some of those bits where all everything got laid down. And I know it's always a big weekend anyway, but I'm sure some of that has just been nailed down now.
Yeah. USC currently sit atop of the 2026 rankings, 1 5-star, 24 stars, and 10 3 stars. Georgia then in behind with 1 5-star, 24 stars, and 5 3 stars. Texas A&M, a really good one here at the moment at number 3. They've got a really large NIL booster, a collective base. And then in at number 4 is Nick's Notre Dame with a 5-star, 19 4 stars, and 5 3 stars. Oregon, you are there at 7, according to Rivals and On3. 2 5-star commits, 9 4 stars, and 3 3 stars.
Yeah, not a bad couple of weeks work, and I think shows the. I think Dan Lanning gets a lot of heat sometimes, a little bit undeserved, and I think it's there's enough of a track record now year on year, which he's starting to show through the recruiting that he is one of those elite coaches. Is worth the money he's on.
Yeah, completely agree. Absolutely. So, other than that as well, we have the fact that, like I say, the Big 12 Media Day happened. It's happening yesterday/today. A couple of bits have come out of it. Nothing overly incredible. There has been a couple of bits again. I need to go back down here. So the Big 12 has partnered with the WWE to bring 4 WWE events. Friday night SmackDown events in Big 12 cities this season. 22nd of August. Um, and Iowa State versus Kansas State in Dublin. Friday, 3rd of October, Iowa State at Cincinnati. Friday, 24th of October, Houston at Arizona State. That's will be in Tempe, Arizona. And Friday, October 31st, it'll be Cincinnati at Utah, Salt Lake City. There will be Friday night SmackDown events in all of those areas around those games, which is nice to see that such a partnership happening because the Big 12 is a fantastic conference, and hopefully that just gives them a bit more of a boost. The best bit of news, though, lads, and this is why I saved this till the very last piece of news that I gave. The whole landscape around the Aer Lingus Classic in Dublin has been changed forever. As the fantastic news came out of the Big 12 Media Day yesterday that the Pop-Tarts Bowl has partnered up with the Aer Lingus Classic, and they will be coming over with Iowa State and Kansas State to the Aer Lingus Classic in August. And I cried for 20 minutes when the news came through. I'll be perfectly honest with you. The 2 surviving mascots, the 2 surviving Pop-Tarts even, will be in attendance at the game. So, Nick, I'm going to need some photo opportunities here. We need to get some photo opportunities with 2 giant Pop-Tarts. Just need you to know that these things are happening.
Right.
If we don't have that photo, it's a whole trip's a failure.
I completely agree. Completely agree.
Does that mean we have to stop calling it Farmageddon now?
No. They're
Oh,
just,
right.
I think they're just in attendance and doing a bit because the last 2 winners of the Pop-Tarts Bowl are Iowa State and Kansas State. It only makes sense. But I want to just see if we can score ourselves some free Pop-Tarts while we're there. If I'm perfect, I just want to find free Pop Tarts because that's my favorite flavor of Pop Tarts. Free.
I don't think I've had a Pop Tart since I was a kid, about
Um,
30 years
Yeah,
ago.
I think I burnt myself once, and that was the end.
yeah, it was. Yeah, my favorite flavor is free of anything.
That'd be brilliant. They got to dish out Pop Tarts outside, haven't they?
Got
Why
to.
wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you?
Got to. So I know they're dying to do it anyway. They liked our tweets and everything. So Pop Tarts Bowl, if you want to do something with us while you're there, um, well, I mean, we're open to it.
So rather than a T-shirt cannon, it's going to be a Pop Tart cannon.
Yes,
Firing Pop Tarts into the stands.
yes. Like, this is genius. I what
Do away with a cannon, just frisbee them out.
they need to bring the massive toaster as well. By the way, they
Oh,
need to bring the
brilliant,
massive toaster. And
brilliant.
I just there are so many possibilities with this as well. If you want help with marketing and things to do during the event, by the way, Pop Tarts Bowl, again, I'm here. I've got all of the ideas. That's it from news on my front. Adam, did you have anything, by the way, that you've seen over the last week or so that we haven't
No,
mentioned?
I think we covered most of it. Obviously, with Big 12, I think as we've been speaking, Dion, Coach Prime's been on saying his piece. It was nice to see him there, given
Yes.
some of the health challenges he's had. He didn't really want to talk about those. Wanted to just talk about ball, which is fine. I think if you haven't seen all the details, but a few words to say about some of his peers in the Big 12 and what they've been up to. Texas Tech. Um, so yeah, no, it's good to see him back and up and fighting really. The other thing we mentioned, Felix Ojo, one of those big 5-star recruits. Obviously, there was a lot of chatter around his package, his financial package.
Oh God, I did that qualifier in there, the financial one.
Yeah,
I thought that myself.
yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll get to that in a minute, but I think it raised a few eyebrows.
Yeah,
So I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute. But that was it really.
yeah,
They're the key things.
yeah. So I'll just say, I'm glad we added you rephrased that and said financial package and not just like talking about someone's package. Um, I
Yeah.
was
As the words came out, I thought, well, they've gone now. I'm going to have to take
it's like
evasive action.
just me, myself, and Nicholas here. We're children. We are children. So well, I can't really say for it. I know I am a child. I will jump on that the moment I see it. Um,
It's only right.
so I think well that's it for news this week. And as mentioned on last week's episode, as we kind of wrapped up the mini series, which our esteemed guest was wonderfully a part of for one of our weeks, helping us design the governance of the brand new college football. I really wanted to talk about house settlement, and some of it comes from the Locked On College, the Locked On Big 12 squad episode that I watched a couple of weeks ago. And some of it just comes from the fact that this has happened. And I know a lot of people listening to this podcast are still kind of getting to grips with college football. You've seen it happen. Let's get with some of the information. Let's get some of this information out about it. Let's see what it means. And then just kind of see what it means in the wider scheme of college athletics and out there in the world. So, as I've said to the boys off camera, I have struggled with structure on this one. This is a weird topic to get into, and I've struggled to kind of come up with a topic for it. Um, I think does anyone like what is the house settlement? Is anybody can anyone like I'm not very good at these can
Well,
small versions of stories
as best
suffice?
as I as best as I can understand it, the agreement is that to ward off the um, legal issues that there is and people bringing legal arguments against the NCAA. By agreeing to this settlement, it allows the NCAA to maintain some structure and some control over what's going on in college football. Because as we've said a few times over the past sort of like year or so, that the NIL sort of I want to, industry is not quite the right word, but environment has become so Wild West like, in that there's no rules to manage it. It is, if a college has got enough money, then they will pay it to a guy that they're desperate to keep. And it's meant that it's just gone a bit sort of all skew with. So this settlement has been put together to allow some control by the NCAA. Now, I touched on it last week about the money that's paid to every single college, this 20.5 million,
Yep.
is not just a football budget. That is the entire NCAA sports budget for that college. If you go and pay 75% of that budget of 15 million to the football side, and then you give basketball 5% and you give women's basketball 5%, the rest of the entire college, the soccer, the lacrosse, the golf, anything, any other sport that you have at that college, has to survive on a share of just over 1 million. So it's gonna require sports athletic directors are gonna need to do some real penny wrangling as to how they're gonna manage this budget, because I don't think once it's gone basically for the year. So you can have your boosters that will come in and provide, top up the coffers and what have you, but that's it. There's nothing else.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very interesting. I did mention this last week. It's going to be very interesting to see how some schools choose to pay so much compared to another school. Because if you are not a big football school and you are a big basketball school, then you are going to be able to pay your basketball stars more money. And therefore, you're probably likely to attract better basketball stars. Sidely, if you're someone like Clemson, who isn't really a basketball school, but is a big football school, you're going to be able to probably attract more people if you've got a bigger football budget than some of the other teams.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably going to take a few years for it to sort of balance out and see where the ebb and the flow goes and what happens. But it is going to be quite interesting. I think the athletic directors have really got a task on their hands now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's so many different aspects to it as well. So actually, on the blog, I've got a full breakdown of the background and everything on the wider house settlement. So the overview Nick gave is one very big element of it, which is live. There's a couple of extra bits as well that's worth pulling out around the settlement, and for a quick 20-second tour of what happened before. Obviously, we started off as from an amateur basis that was legally challenged, as Nick said. We got to a point where a number of lawsuits were going on. They were grouped together in a class action lawsuit under the lead settlement, which was Grant House, the swimmer. That came forward with a couple of things. One, how do we have some sort of revenue sharing going forward? But also, what about all of those guys that missed out on this, any revenue sharing? So there's a back pay element as well, which is 2.8 billion, which is an amount almost like we should see it as damages that will be paid out. So that was of the actual settlement when it was announced. This is what Judge Wilkin came up with. We have the back pay element, and then we've got the future moving revenue share element. We've also got some new details of an enforcement entity. So a new entity called the College Sports Commission was created primarily to govern this stuff going forward when it comes to NIL. And there'll be the NLL Go piece as well, which I'm sure we'll touch on at the moment.
Yes, we will.
The back pay piece has actually been frozen for the moment. So there's been a legal stay. So when the settlement came out, I think it was the 7th of June, there was a number of legal challenges to that for various reasons, or appeals, should I say. That has meant that is frozen in time. The main argument against that settlement piece is around Title IX. So Title IX is a piece of important US legislation around equal treatment across male and female athletes. Now, the argument being this 2.8 billion of back pay would primarily go be shared out on a marketing or calculated on a marketing basis. Who's made the most money, which normally would be the college football, the male college football players or the male basketball players. So that back pay amount would naturally go more to male athletes as opposed to female. And under Title IX, there would be a legal argument that it should be split a bit more equally. So the judge is going to have to sort all that out. That's probably going to take a year. So that back pay piece is frozen in time. There's a stay on that. So, but what can go live and has gone live as of 9 days ago is the revenue share element. As and Nick pointed out the key points of that. It was elective, so the schools could elect to do it. Obviously, most Power 4 or FBS schools have elected to do that. And as Nick said, there's a cap of 20.5 million, which is based on a formula. But the expectation is most of that will go to your football programs as opposed to the rest of it. So there's a number of issues there around what do you do with the rest of it? What do you do with non-football sports? How does that all shake up? Which I'm sure we can get into.
Yeah, I think that's primarily where I want to start with here is the what happens to other non-football or the non there's three top sports in college athletics. Number one, by far, and nothing really comes close, is college football. That makes the most money. That brings in the biggest audiences. Men's basketball is second, and March Madness, I think, brings in a lot of that. It brings in a lot of money for the NCAA specifically. Then women's basketball is third, and that also brings in a lot of money for the NCAA just with March Madness. Apologies. But March Madness does a lot of heavy lifting for college basketball, I think, for the most part. The rest of them just kind of fall by the wayside, and it'll depend on where you are in the country, what your college specifically offers, just how much your college wants to involve themselves in certain athletics. Now, LSU were quite big on gymnastics. And there's the whole documentary about LSU and their NIL program on Amazon Prime, which is a fantastic documentary, by the way. Fantastic. I don't know if you've seen it. But it's a really good document how they kind of, as soon as it was announced that NIL could happen, LSU had an office prepared for a team of three people who just went out and found them deals, and they were just like, "Hey, we're gonna run NIL. Basically, we're gonna be leaders in this," and they were fantastic. And it follows Jaden Daniels, Angel Reese, and is it Sophie? Not Sophie.
Sophie Cunningham.
There's a swimmer. Does it follow?
There's a swimmer and there's a gymnast, both from LSU. But again, fantastic documentary. But things like gymnastics, things like lacrosse, hockey, golf, tennis.
Soccer.
What does this mean for soccer? What does this mean for all of these other sports? Because there are a lot of students right now thinking, well, what do I do?
I think I mentioned last week, over here we have lottery funded. All the sports clubs that do these Olympics, Olympic sports, whether it be gymnastics, whether it be weightlifting, whatever it is, track and field. Over here they all get lottery funding. So they have money to run and they have. But like college sports is where your athletes for the Olympics come from. So if you cut off the funding, it's going to have an adverse effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there's one other thing as well that was a little quite a big detail for those impacted in the settlement around roster caps as well, and scholarships. So as the settlement journey went through, there's this whole issue that came up around, having how many scholarships you can offer. So you can now offer everyone on a squad a scholarship, but the roster limits have had to trim back in. And the challenge there is you're going to have walk-ons who might not make teams anymore. We've seen, where you're going to have to support and fund maybe a greater pool of people. Colleges are looking around at some of the other sports on the periphery, perhaps, and where they've offered someone a place, a scholarship, they may be now withdrawing that. So we've seen an element of that. There was some reprieve offered as a bit of a halfway house where roster limits can come in over time. So if someone's been promised a place this year pre-settlement, they'd be allowed to honour that. But I think we've seen there's been stories of people being offered something, then removing it. Now they're at a college and they can't do the sport they want to do. They got to transfer at the last minute, and all sorts of terrible stories in that respect. And it's just the kind of downstream impact on the invisible athletes, college athletes, that you don't see from some of the big picture when it comes to football.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the best things watching the Olympics last year was like we're watching the swimming, and they're doing a piece on, like the BBC were doing a piece on a swimmer, and as they kind of cut over to his coaches and whatnot, they're all in Texas gear. And I distinctly remember for the swimming, I did distinctly remember the colleges being in Texas gear. And I remember watching another sport and I see a TCU jacket. There's another sport and someone's wearing Oregon and all these different sports. And one of the things I think most people don't realize is that when I was watching the swimming, the coaches for the guy who was swimming, his coaches were at Texas and he went to Texas to do swimming and all that sort of stuff. He wasn't American. I think he might have been Latvian or something. And the British athletes will go to America to study on a scholarship and do one of those athletics programs because that's where a lot of the coaches are. And that's where some of the best in the world are. And this isn't just affecting. Look, there are other political situations going on with international students that are going to change, but this is international students that are changing that are going to have to sort different things out because America has some of the best athletes in the world going to college just to be there.
Yeah, you raise a good point. Actually, you just reminded me of another thing in that another wrinkle with the revenue share is if you're on one of those international student visas, the terms of it that you can't receive payment compensation because you're there to study. So I think most of the tennis players, a lot of the tennis teams come from abroad, and a lot from Eastern Europe. So it's in those sports, it's causing them a massive issue because they don't know how to deal with this. Because how do you navigate this problem where you've got a visa challenge? There's a hard legal issue, and there's again just so much of these downstream things that no one perhaps considered or wasn't really at the front of center of decision making. And I think we'll see legal challenge after legal challenge on so many fronts. Certainly around a lot of these periphery sports.
And I mean, I'm looking here, right? Stanford have 36 varsity sports. Harvard have 42 D1 sports. Ohio State have 36 varsity sports. University of Minnesota sponsors 25 men's and women's varsity teams. These are thousands of student athletes. Thousands of student athletes. And as I say, it's a really, really strange point to be. And I was listening to the Locked On Big 12 squad the other week, and they were talking about how, like, the Olympic level sports as well, because when they're doing that piece on the Latvian swimmer who went to Texas and they're cutting to the Texas coach in the Texas jumper and the Texas hoodie and all that sort of stuff, those camera angles that are being cut are also being cut in France, Spain, Germany, Australia, Japan, China. They're being streamed all over the world, and that is global advertisement for that college, right? Though it may not be like the swimming is not directly making Texas a lot of money. I don't know. Some might be able to come in and say, well, actually, it generates some 300 billion a year. I don't think it does. But those Olympic level sports give that college a global brand that does allow the best young athletes in the world to go, I want to go there because that's what's going to give me a great opportunity. And it'd be interesting to see what some of those conversations internally are like with the Olympic level sports. And that's some of the things we mentioned on the Locked On Big 12. Right as they turned around and said, and let's face it, Europeans don't give 13 craps about a college football game, which was a lie. But we digress. I don't want to get into that one this week. But it does provide global reach for some of these universities having having these Olympic level programs.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it feeds itself, doesn't it? You get the success, you get the marketing, and you're getting the next talent, and so on and so forth. It's a machine that needs to continue to feed itself. And if it breaks down, you know, the whole thing breaks down. I think there's a stat I saw somewhere that 80%, maybe higher, of the US Olympic squad from Paris had all played collegiate sport.
Yeah.
You know, that is the main funnel. And let's face it, let's see how successful have the US Olympics team been? Very successful. So the machine works, and any sort of challenge to that, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah. Nick, I mean, like, you're a hockey guy more than
Yes.
more than I like to think. Well, I don't know about you, Adam, but I know you're definitely a hockey guy more than I am. Even sports like college hockey, how much of a hit is that gonna take?
Um, well, I mean,
Because it's one of the big four.
it is at the pro level, but not every college does hockey. I mean, that's not every college does ice hockey, I should say. Um, you know, the further north you go, yeah, the more popular, the further north towards Canada you go, yes, the more popular ice hockey is at college level. You know, I don't, again, Sam could quote me wrong, but I don't think Texas have got an ice hockey program. You know, um, and if they do, it's not a very good one. Um, but because outside of that main sort of football, basketball, baseball sort of avenue, the rest of the sports are one of these where some schools will have certain sports, some schools will have other sports, and students will adjust where they want to go based on the sports that are played. But I think, a lot of the money when it comes to ice hockey at a college level, I can only assume it's expensive to maintain the ice and have that running all the time. And
Yeah.
so, I think, and that's kind of the point I made when I said, you have too many, if you have too many sports at your school, you won't be able to fund them all. So I think you will see over time, you will probably see schools dropping sports because they can't afford to run them.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, a lot of these sports will continue. Like I say, they'll continue to cost money to run. And you look at baseball. Baseball is going to be a fantastic example because of just how many games that you play.
Yeah,
And even in collegiate baseball, I mean, basketball, ice hockey, uh, baseball are all similar to the football world, in which football's a short season, basketball's a bit longer, baseball's a bit longer, and you're playing every few days. One day you're in, let's say you're Oregon, uh, doing this by the way. You 1 week you're going to play USC, then a couple of days later you're in Washington, then you're at home. Then because you're now in the Big Ten, you're flying out then to Minnesota, or you're flying out to Michigan, or you're flying out to Ohio to play a game, then flying back out the next day. Then you might have a couple of games at home, and then you're all over the place all the time, and that travel isn't cheap
Yeah,
to do it that much. And you say it's continuously, you're not getting I mean, MLB is currently tanking on a lot of viewership. I think it's got better over the last couple of years, but MLB has tanked viewership in the last few years. College baseball, I don't think it would have been much different. Um, so that continued cost. I mean, well, yeah, all of the sports have that, to be fair. Um, but not as much as football, where you're playing 12 regular season games a year. If you're a big college and you're playing three cupcake games, chances are you're telling them, no, 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 you're going to come to our house and play this game because we're the bigger school and we can tell you we'll give you a mil. Don't care. Um, Someone did that last year and got absolutely embarrassed at home by Northern Illinois. I can't remember who that was. Um,
No comment.
um, but yeah, if you're in football, you play 12 games a season, maybe seven, maybe eight of those games even are at home.
Yeah.
If you're quite lucky and you're one of those colleges who does that, it's not even costing as much per se. I mean, I know it costs a lot. There's that many people that fly out. There's that much equipment involved and all that. But the other sports just run at a cost.
Yeah, I think we'll see colleges, schools will have to figure out what their budget is on the football side and the basketball side, or the main revenue generating sport. Get that model working nicely, and then you look around at the non-revenue generating sports and say, well, what's really viable here? Where have we got competitive advantages in sports where we have a lot of success? We've got coaching, we've got good facilities. Where are we running sports that we're not that competitive in? It's draining a bit of cash. Maybe we need to step away or phase out of those. That thought process I think we'll have to go through, and maybe we'll just have schools specializing a little bit more. I mean, it's not for the non-revenue sports. Obviously, there is an element of NIL. It's not to the same degree as you get in the other sports. So it is really, why would, if you're that Latvian looking at colleges, why are you going to go to Texas instead of Michigan or anywhere else? It's,
Yeah.
well, my sport's really popular, or the best coach in the country is at Michigan or Texas. So it's more those non-revenue factors for those particular students. But I think that'll get whittled down, and you'll have lots of specialism.
I'm just reading. I'm just reading this list here. Forgive me. Um, it's a list. It's a list of college sports by popularity, and what they're saying on this article is that the likelihood is that if schools misappropriate funds, not in a bad way, but just don't balance the books correctly, the sports most likely to be at risk are boxing, tennis, volleyball, and some athletics sports. They are the sports that are most likely in most schools to be at risk.
Will someone please think of the shot putters and the javeliners, please?
I was thinking about the beach volleyballers, to be honest. You know, they need you need to be thinking about them. I enjoy watching Brazilian beach
Right, Nick.
volleyball. It is a very
Right,
good sport.
right, okay, right, we get it. Um, so no, by the way, I do want to come in with a bit of information for you. Texas Longhorns do in fact have an ice hockey team,
Wow.
All right, okay.
and they compete in the Texas Collegiate Hockey Conference with
Uh-huh.
Baylor, TCU, UNT, SMU, Texas A&M, Texas State, and who on earth are they? Um,
I
is that
stand corrected.
Texas El Paso? Um, so yeah, I mean they're not very good, but um, you are a bit
Except
better at ice hockey in Texas if you're playing against all the schools in Texas.
Texas,
So
that makes sense. Yeah, so that's interesting. So the normal conference kind of breaks down, and you have slightly different things outside of the main sports. Then it must do, because I guess if you're the shot putters, you can't be going all over the country for shot putting meets. That's just not economically viable, I'm
No, I
guessing.
would think not. I would
They
think,
must have other
you know,
alliances, I guess.
yeah.
Well, I'm thinking with things like that, though, wouldn't you find that it'd be similar to an athletics day at the Olympics or, I don't know, school sports day, where you have one big meet
Yeah,
where you're not going to meets all year round just as a shot putter on your own because, like I say, it's not economically viable. But what you'll probably have is just a big day or two of just pure athletics, and it'll probably be slightly cheaper to send 10 people out once than one person out 10 times.
yeah.
Um, so that's what I'm gonna get. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't know college shot putting very, very well at all. I know college cornhole better than I know college shot putting. Um, so, but no, it is interesting to see. It's going to be really interesting to see just how those things are gonna work. But without meaning to kind of stay completely on this topic, um, is there anything anyone would like to? I mean, Adam will give you the floor first. Is there anything you want to kind of close out on this specific topic? Because anything else, I think we're just going to kind of go around repeating ourselves.
On the non-revenue side, non-revenue sports now, I think we've covered most of the points. Is a watch this space at the moment. I think there will be change coming. It won't be good because I'm not sure a lot of this really is good for those non-revenue sports. It'll be scraps in the fallout, but what would you
Yeah,
expect? The revenue sports dominate, they make the money.
yeah. Nick,
I think all I would say is I think there's got to be trial and error on both sides. You will probably find that a college, you can pick one off the top of your head. A college will probably portion up the money and see how it goes for a year and realize they haven't given that sport enough money, they've given that one too much, and it'll be a bit of fine tuning here and there, and it'll probably take a few years, it might even take as long as close to a decade to get the right balance between what you are paying to which sport. And as I said earlier, you will find that some schools pay more to a certain sport than others just because that's what's important to them. But I think, it's not a this is not an overnight thing. It's going to take time to be blended in and get right. And you'll hear a lot of moaning for a few years. Oh, I've got no money because my college hasn't budgeted correctly. You'll probably hear stories like that. But, I think you have to give both sides,
yeah,
both the college side and the athletes, time to get to work together.
And I know we'll get to it, but just to leave a placeholder here, I think what they do on a federal level in terms of codifying some of this stuff will be quite interesting as well. But I know we'll get to that in due course.
yeah. Um, just have finalized this on myself. Just to put a final thing in myself is just pretty much similar to what both of you have said there. I'm just reminding everyone that like some colleges out there don't even have a football program. Some colleges out there can't afford to opt into this. Likelihood is their day's not going to change. Their life is not going to change. Is it going to get more frustrating watching all this happen above them? Yes, but it's a bit similar to, I guess, being walking down the street in London and then getting really angry while with a pair of binoculars looking into Buckingham Palace and going, look at what they're eating. Um, Look, at the end of the day, this is life. When I'm not in Buckingham Palace eating what they're eating, I'm out here eating a McDonald's or a Popeyes. I'm happier than they are. I promise you with that one. But some schools just don't have that program. Some schools will never be in that realm. Likelihood is the life for them will not change very much. The sports they have, they'll keep. The sports they don't, they won't. I mean, the greatest school in the history of Georgia athletics, Kennesaw State, they didn't even have a football team 10 years ago, and they were a basketball team. And now they have the best football team in all of Georgia. These things that some teams will change and move it around, but it's just the world that we're in. Like Nick said, what's gonna happen in the future is gonna just be based on it's gonna be every college's individual decision. You might find some colleges really like and want to keep tennis. Some of them are a bit just get that out of here as quickly as possible. maybe look at which tennis stars, super rich mega tennis stars who have big budgets and big pockets went to colleges over in the state. Which ones had those go there? Which colleges did they go to? And maybe you'll see which ones may keep because they'll have some boosters in there for the future. However, right, okay, so I want to talk as well about the other part of this, which you've mentioned, Adam, earlier, is the Deloitte's involvement, the investment firm or the finance firm. They have set up the clearinghouse, which is called NIL Go. They will oversee every single deal via NIL that comes through. I believe it's over $500.
$600. Yeah.
$600. Anything under $600, no one cares. Above $600, it has to go through NIL Go and Deloitte, and they'll assess it for fair market value. If you are, most of us will probably now be familiar with that term. It's been a term thrown around in the Premier League for years over transfers and whether they're fair market value and whether sponsorship deals are fair market value and things like that. Nick and I know, are very familiar with the term fair market value over the last few years. Just a little bit of information on this thing before I throw it out to you two gentlemen. When Deloitte when it all came through and Deloitte came out and were like, okay, we've got this, we're setting this up. They came out and said that 70% of past NIL collective deals would have failed their current system. That is 70% of the past NIL collective deals would have failed, would not have passed through the clearinghouse. However, because there are two sides to NIL, 90% of the deals done with public companies would be accepted anyway. 90% of them. And that is, I found that extremely interesting to read. Really interesting to read. That it's the NIL collective deals that were not representing fair market value, etc., etc. First off, is this a good thing to have a finance firm like Deloitte assessing these deals, making sure the fair market value? Is this a bit of overreach? Is this needed?
I think you certainly needed somebody to manage it, and I think you did need somebody on the outside. I don't think it's sensible to let the colleges sort of do it themselves. And there does need to be some level of what's the word? Culpability to what you are actually paying. Fair market value works both ways. And so it protects those that are doing the paying, but it also, protects those that are being paid. And I think it makes sense to bring in a financial firm to do it. If they'd said that they were going to allow Home Depot to do it, I would question whether that would be the right investment person you wanted to do it. But I think you look at Deloitte and what they do throughout the world. They are a sports financial market manager, and so it's a good firm, if you like, to have running the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if we go back as well, just to think about what we're trying to achieve or why you need this in the first place, is obviously, whilst we've had this amateurism concept, there's been money floating around in the system under the table for years. The brown paper bags, I'm sure, been dropped neatly on someone's desk in the universities. So there's always been an element of payment going around the system informally. The NIL system was set up in a bit of a hurry by the NCAA with some of these legal challenges. So it was thrown together as a stopgap
Yeah.
before we can get to the house settlement. And that that created these NIL collectives in the first place, because it became an independent body from the school, because the school could not pay athletes themselves. So you needed this other weird thing, which was kind of booster funded in a way. It wasn't the school, but it kind of looked a bit like the school. And that helped circumvent some of the rules. So if you're a big booster, you can fund your NIL collective and you can use that firepower to go and bring in some of these players. So that created an unfair playing ground. So when we come to thinking about this, yes, you do need a body in there that can give a independent view on this stuff. With Deloitte, as Nick said, you buy instant credibility. One of the big four audit firms know what they're doing, have the infrastructure behind them as well, to create things like the algorithm that we've got um, for the fair market value. So absolutely makes sense. My question with it has always been, that's great, but how do you get this thing up and running correctly so quickly? Because an algorithm, great, you can feed in every NIL transaction that's ever happened into it, and it will give you a view today. But that market shifts, and if the NIL landscape changes overnight because you have the house settlement, then those deals might look different on day one compared to day two. So that's a challenge.
Yeah.
How do you get people how do you staff this? Who's going to look at all these transactions? Because you need bums on seats. I'm guessing that's been outsourced to Deloitte as well. We haven't seen that detail. But there's a big infrastructure. You can't just create a body overnight, and I'm sure they've been working on this in the background. But there's a lot there that you need to pull together to make this work. I think the 70% figure of past deals is right. I think I saw something today. I think 1,200 deals have been pushed through the pipe. A third of them have been approved, and I think 80 have been declined with comments. So you would expect them to come back once they've been adjusted. And there's a load just stuck in the queue to be reviewed. Now, I don't know how many people they've got reviewing them and what context you're going to review them in, but one of those, I'm sure, will get rejected and there'll be a legal challenge. And then where you then?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So I was going to say, on the legal challenge, I've got something to ask you about. Well, I'm going to ask the room about it in a bit, but I want to be careful about it because I don't want us to get too far into politics, especially another country's politics, while we're already being on someone else's game. But yeah, no, fair enough, absolutely fair. What I kind of wanted to ask, I've got to put this as well. Like, look at the Bryce Underwood deal, right? Michigan paying what, 10 million, 11 million over 4 years to Bryce Underwood. And you ask yourself, would that go through? Because that was through the NIL collective. That wasn't through pretty much for the most part. That was Dave Portnoy, Tom Brady, and there was one other lady who was a booster making phone calls to him and saying, "Excuse me, over here, money, over here." That was them doing it, and you ask yourself, would that kind of thing, maybe because elite top level quarterbacks like the NFL, they're who are going to command the most money. And if you've got the number one recruit in the country at quarterback, yeah, probably actually that might be worth that amount. But it's going to be interesting to see. And one question I think I'm very, very interested to see the first time is like, who's the first one out of the big teams? Your top 10, top 20 college teams, not in the AP rankings per se, just in the grand scheme of college football, out of your Georgia, your Alabama, your Texas, your Oregon, your Ohio State, your Michigan, your Notre Dame. I would say FSU, but not anymore. No, no one. That's just laughable now. But your Florida, when are they gonna get their first one rejected, and how are they going to take that, and how well is that gonna go down? Will Deloitte have for lack of a better phrase, although I think we're past that this episode. Will they have the bollocks to turn around to Kevin De Boer and say, no, you can't offer them that much money. They can't take that. That's not on. Will they have the balls to do so? And what if they don't? What if they're more than happy to say it to Sam Houston? Or what if they're more than happy to say it to Kent State, but over a much smaller deal, but Alabama or Georgia sneak through a bit of a dodgy one and nothing gets
I
said?
think I think that's why it's important that Deloitte are independent. That's why I said I don't think you could have the colleges do this in-house because there would be those issues. Um, just something there. I wonder whether if let's say going back to Bryce Underwood, let's say over 4 years he was paid 12 million for argument's sake, make the maths a bit easier.
Yeah.
That's 3 million a year. So 3 million out of your 20.5 million a year is straight away being paid to your quarterback.
Well, that's out of the collective. That's not out of the budget that a college gets to pay. That's the collective money that
I
they're
know
paying
because there's
to.
boosters. I
Yeah.
get it. There's boosters as well. But when you think about, like, I saw an article where Texas reckon they can probably afford 40 million a year, including this deal. Well, if you look at um, NFL teams, the quarterback tends to be paid somewhere between, the elite quarterbacks, let's say the Josh Allens, the Patrick Mahomes, they're on about what, 23, 24% of the salary cap. You'll probably find your left tackle's probably been paid somewhere about 10%. And so I think you've seen where a lot of schools have started bringing in office staff from NFL teams as directors, and I'm wondering whether that's related to the deal that, you know, you're bringing in professional people who've worked in the professional game in the front office, and they can attest to how the money's distributed, and so I think it might sort of work that way in that you start to see sort of like a more not professional, but a more NFL style setup of how you distribute your money to your squad, to your roster, effectively.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think the whole front office setup has to professionalize them all, and you can't just have academically minded people
Yeah,
doing this anymore. You need that external professional pro football style management team to run this stuff because it's tricky, right? Because you've got you said the revenue share element, which you have some control of. You've then got your NIL collective, which is in a bit of a grey area, and then you've got any other third party deals. So it's interesting as well because the way NIL Go should work is it's the athlete's responsibility to log those deals with NIL Go or their advisors. But if they don't do it, there is comeback on the schools via the College Sports Commission. So and that's actually an interest. That's another side point, really. So and Deloitte won't be kicking anyone. They just refer stuff to the College Sports Commission, from what I understand, and they're the
Yeah.
ones who get the bat out and hit schools with whatever enforcement they're eventually going to dish out. Um, so, in theory, we should see over time a more level playing field because someone like say, Deloitte will look at the deal and say, Bryce Underwood, what were you really doing for that 10 million of NIL or whatever it is? You know, are you really rocking up to these events? Are you really doing a bit of work? Is it really for your marketing, or is it just a little bit of money so you
He's
play
going to be
football?
busy winning 4 national championships in a row,
He's
my
got all that
friend.
celebrating. He's got all of that advertising to do with his natty on his lap.
All 4 of them.
Um, all four of them. But so it'll be interesting. I think we will see NIL should revert to being NIL, and then you've got the revenue share. Will there be a grey area that gets abused? Of course there will, because every school will be looking for the weakness in the system and how can it be exploited. We see it in the Premier League, right? Every it happens everywhere. But this is where you need an independent Deloitte who just objective, yes or no, red light, green light, and then the College Sports Commission can bring the enforcement piece, and maybe that's a bit more subjective.
Yeah. And look, I get what we're saying. I get what you're saying as well, Nick. But I've said this. I said this throughout the as we reimagined and redesigned college football. In a perfect world, yes, they're independent, and yes, because they're independent, they act free of any bias or whatever. But it always worries me, and it will always be in my head. And well, until it's not, until if in 5 years' time they've slapped Georgia on the wrist 3 times, I'm not saying, well, Georgia might do everything by the book at this point, and fair enough. And I don't mean to single out Georgia. Oh, yeah, exactly. But like they might. But if they've slapped a few of the big colleges on the wrist and said, "Whoa, whoa, 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 you're skating a bit too close here to the very edge of this rule, bring it back a little." If they're doing that, then fair enough. But I always have that worry, and even when we redesign college football, that unfortunately there are colleges with just too much money, and there are people that just want too much power, and one day it's going to kick off. And here's where I say I wanted to get into the bit about where obviously, I always want to be careful about just how much politics we get into, but it links to politics, and politics will get involved at some point. It's inevitable. Adam, you've already said a school's going to sue. But also, what happens when your state gets involved and the state government gets involved? What happens when the federal government has to end up getting involved? It's when you tell Georgia no, when the state of Georgia comes in and says you can't deny anyone in the state of Georgia the opportunity to earn. You can't deny them money. You're not allowed to do that. It goes against the antitrust laws or whichever law it is that breaks. And they tell you to go swivel. Swivel on my gyro, as one of my friends likes to say, tell to people all the time. Like, what happens then? Because we are running into that thing where at some point it's not a snag that we're going to run into. It's going to be Deloitte try and run away with the no and yanked back with a hook that's going to hurt.
Yeah, yeah, and it'll be tested, I'm sure, at some point very soon. And I think those stats I gave, that 2/3, that's going to be the interesting testing ground, where how many of those 2/3 eventually get a green light anyway, and which ones truly do get kicked back, and why are they getting kicked back. Hopefully, we get to see some details of that in time. And if NIL collectives and everyone's got a bit lazy, and we've been dishing out money for not very much, then fine, that probably needs to change. The whole approach needs to change. NIL needs to be true NIL. Players will have to actually do a bit of work for it. But I think what they'll need to do is probably codify some of this into federal law at some point to really deal with it, because you're right, all of these states will have different interpretations, different agendas. So it's only when you send it straight up to I don't know, the Senate, the House, I can't remember how it works in America, and get this stuff put into legislation that you deal with all of it at the top.
It's gonna be it's gonna be interesting, and you're gonna find out which states. I can already see Florida working up something now. Like the state of Florida working up something now that says you do not cap the earning potential of anybody, and don't do it, don't even touch it. But then I can also see certain Midwestern states going, and people in that state going, well, we don't want college football to be like this. We want college football to go back to how it was and try. And how interesting that fight's gonna be. And it's a crazy time.
Yeah.
And
Well,
may get
But
crazier.
further complicate it, some of these colleges are private, some of them are public. So their statutes say they can do different things at that level as well. So there's so many variables here across so many teams, so many states. It just gets bigger and bigger. So trying to sort that out, unless you go right to the top and codify some of the stuff in law, you're forever going to be in legal challenges.
Yeah. And like, yeah, it's gonna be it it can get easier, but it can also get a whole lot messier. And if as long as we're prepared for it to get messier, I mean, well, what can we do about it? It's that overhearing. I know Greg Sankey's my mate, and I could try and talk him out of it, Nick, but whether he does or doesn't, I don't know.
To put a bit of a silver lining on it, though, I think we're sitting here in July. We haven't seen a football thrown in anger for a number of months now. Come 30th of August, we'll have football to talk about, and Saturdays will still feel like Saturdays, and this stuff hopefully should just
Excuse me,
fade into the background.
excuse me, sir. On the 23rd of August, 2025, at around
I picked the wrong
around
week. Okay.
12 a.m. GMT, I will be arriving back at a hotel room in Dublin, and my wife will be looking at me saying, "Surely you cannot watch more college football." And I will be going, "Excuse me, but Hawaii are playing."
That's fair. That's fair. Don't blame you.
23rd of August, that college football will return for week 0. In fact, before we do go, and I will even say, by the way, 31st of July, the Detroit Lions are back against the LA Chargers in the Hall. I know it's the Hall of Fame game, but my days, my friend, it is football.
We'll have something else to talk about, which will be good.
Come on, ESPN. Right, here we go. Last year, my wife did the same. By the way, obviously, my wife didn't come with me to Mrs. Fletch did not come with us to Dublin last year, for Florida State Georgia Tech. But as the wonderful wife she is, and I will give her a shout out on this podcast. I always like to do when I can give her a shout out, I will do. She drove me to Manchester Airport at 5:30 in the morning to go and meet Nick. She picked me up from Manchester Airport that night and brought me home. We didn't get home till 1:30 in the morning. It cost me a McDonald's on the way home, but um, I sat down and she's had a nap during the day and she's at least slept at least. But says to me like, "Charlie, you're done now. Let's have a chill out and you can go to sleep." And I'm going, whoa, 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 whoa. There's more college football on. It's week 0. There are multiple games on today. And tried to stay up till 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning and watch the Hawaii game. Week 0 this year will be still the same. So obviously at 5 p.m. kicking off in Dublin, Ireland, will be Iowa State at Kansas State. That'll be the Farmageddon. The Aer Lingus Classic featuring the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Just had to throw that one out there, the Pop-Tarts Bowl. At 11:30 p.m. GMT, Fresno State will be in Kansas taking on the Kansas Jayhawks. At 12 a.m. midnight, Sam Houston will be facing Western Kentucky in Bowling Green. And finally, at 12:30 a.m., Stanford will be at Hawaii. So
But we don't give 13 craps, of course.
not at all. And while I'm halfway through the fourth quarter of Stanford, Hawaii, well, it's 4 in the morning, and I've already done. We've already been to a college football game that day, and I'll be saying I just don't care about this. I really don't. Couldn't give 13 craps about this. Not interested at 3:30 in the morning. But the week after, what a matchup that! I'm looking at the Thursday here because obviously ESPN compile week 0 and week 1 as one single week.
Yeah.
10:30 p.m. GMT on Thursday, August 28th. It's just after that, it's football, 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 football. There was like 14 games on that night. And then there's more on the Friday, lads. And then there's even more on the Saturday. And
And it's back. We're back to usual. The world is right again.
oh, I just can't. Right. No, I'm not going to get on this conversation because I'll just start getting really excited and probably cry. So it's probably best that we don't do this. But that's it. Okay, I think for where we're at. Unless you guys had anything else extra to add as well on the
Oh,
Deloitte clearinghouse.
not on the Deloitte Clearinghouse. Obviously, College Sports Commission. I'm really interested to see what that looks like. Still, I think we've got a CEO. We've maybe got some top management. We've got nothing else. So I can't wait to see how they're going to shape up. But interestingly, just had a little feed running on the other screen, and I can see the comments from Dion Sanders in his Big 12 interview, and he's been talking about a salary cap. He wishes college football had a salary cap like the NFL does, just to bring that level of transparency, I guess,
Yeah.
to the game, which is, I think there's a lot of merit in that, in terms of being very clear. And I think one of you mentioned it earlier in terms of, I think it was Nick when a moment ago, in terms of what a quarterback gets paid, what a lineman gets paid, etc., etc. Just having it very clear who gets what within a structure. I think it was in relation to the NFL. That makes a lot of sense if you're going to go down that route. So it's just very clear. So you have your base, and then NIL is the variable on top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, you get that aspect. You get the aspect of college football don't like implementing stuff from the NFL because they like college football to be its own thing. But just because you don't like implementing something doesn't mean that what you should implement isn't actually good. You know, the whole idea is take something from in this case, look at something in the NFL that works, that the NFL have proven for decades works. There is nothing wrong with putting that in your game and saying that makes our game better. Who cares where it came from? Who cares, swallow your pride.
Right.
Goes back to what we said, Fletch, about, the big teams and the big conferences running college football. College football doesn't belong to these teams. You have to do what's best for the sport. You are merely just passing through the sport. The sport was there before you came, will be there after you've gone. You are merely passing through. Do what is best for the sport, not what is best for you.
Yeah, there's the whole custodians of the game. Right, but let me ask you this, right? The NFL did a vote tomorrow and said we're going to remove the salary cap. And owners and teams, with the money that you generate, just pay them whatever. Go back to the early 90s, right? You can do that what you want. Now, I'm going to give you an opportunity to say which team is most likely to turn around and vote, okay, that's fine. And I'll give you a hint. Since the salary cap was introduced, within a year or two after that, they've not been bloody relevant since. Kel Surprise. Which team would most likely say, okay, that's fine, no salary cap? Some teams would be very up for it.
Cowboys?
I know what you're
Cowboys.
getting at, but I don't think the Cowboys would. Jerry's got far too shorter arms and far too deeper pockets.
No, I know, but if it meant, given the situation is in now, yes, but I think you turn around to him and say, yeah, but if you can now spend 30, 40, 50 million more and you can win the fucking Super Bowl every year because you can build a super team, right? You can build a super team. You can do what Manchester City have just done in soccer for the last few years. You can do what the Patriots and Man United, well Patriots did, but like you can build that super team. You can do what Real Madrid did in Europe for years. You can build a super team that nobody
That
else can because
implies
you're
that
by.
Jerry could actually build a team
Well,
to start
do you
with.
know what? That is a very, very fair point. I'm going to sit back on this one.
Well,
But
it's interesting though, isn't it? Because City built a super team, but Pep built a team. He
well,
was
yeah,
given
yeah,
lots of expensive toys, and you look at PSG with, it didn't quite work for them when they had the likes of Messi and Neymar, but when they've gone back to building a team,
yeah.
it's all come good.
I mean,
So
yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? And I think the recruiting part of college football, you know, will be still be very important because you're going to have that. If everyone's paying similar money ish, you're going to have something else to get players to come to you, and I think that's where your
Yeah.
coach comes in.
But I think what I'm kind of getting at as well with that point though is like, yeah, okay, yeah, one, okay, fair enough. Jerry's a cheap ass, right? You don't get younger to be that rich without being a cheap ass on some things. But if you had that opportunity, there would like someone like Jerry Jones, there are a couple of teams in the NFL who can say, look, we can genuinely throw way more money at this than anyone else can. We can dominate the NFL for the next 10 years, 15 years, whatever. And if they could have the opportunity to have that almost guaranteed in front of them, they'd take it. And that this is what I'm saying with Georgia, with you, Alabama. If you have a group of teams that just say, look, it works against you to have a salary cap because if there's a salary cap, that means that you can't. All the Power Four teams can afford that salary cap and they can live on the same game as you, right? You're gonna have to make you can't go out and get your 5-star quarterback and get that highly touted 4-star as your backup just in case. You've got to let that 4-star walk and go to the really good go to another school in the Big 12 or in the ACC. It's going to reduce some of that parity, guaranteed. But if you were to turn around and say and have it how it were before, where you don't have that parity, and yes, you can go and run college football, I just don't think they wouldn't vote for it. They wouldn't want it. They wouldn't allow it. If they could stop it, they would.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
and
turkeys
like I
voting
say,
for Christmas, isn't it? It's just
yeah,
not going to happen.
well, yeah, I would say it's more butchers vote. The butchers voting for if they want to be. They think that voting for the salary cap is the turkeys voting for Christmas.
Uh,
That's the bit that works against them. Um, and yeah, I just kind of think in an ideal world, I would agree completely with you that that is the perfect scenario, right? Kind of going back to how college football was in the 50s or the 60s or the 70s, where, but also like, well, they're getting paid and everyone's getting equal, and if there's a salary cap and everything, and you get less parity, you get more competitive games, you get more distribution of talent, you get to see more things going on. Like, hopefully the progression going into the NFL is even better. But I just think it's there are some teams that are just that they will go down kicking and screaming. And there's nothing that we can do about it. The only thing that we can do is sit back, hope, and watch that while they're going down kicking and screaming, they don't they don't kick too hard and get the opportunity to run away. Um so yeah, it's just one of them. Vote a salary cap would be great though. I do agree that a salary cap would be great and would genuinely work in the favor of like a more fair and equal college football that's probably better all around in terms of the product as well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if you had, I mean, a wider spread of the talent, in theory, you raise the level of all teams, you raise the average, which should be good for the sport. I know that's a purist view that doesn't always work like that, but that would be how you would hope it would work.
Yeah.
And in theory, if NIL is truly about marketing, and a player is that has that star power, then there should be someone in any market willing to pay them for that marketability.
Yeah.
Now, if NIL go creates a true average, true mean that can follow, everyone should regress to that mean at some point. It just takes some time to get there.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's like any of these things, you need to judge it in maybe years, not months, certainly not weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, entirely fair. But as well, I can't wait to see how it plays out. I can't. Well, Karen can't. Um, with that, I think it's about time we called it a day. On this, gentlemen, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you both, as always is. Adam, it goes without saying, but you are welcome back anytime. And
Thank you.
would
Good
you
to be
like
here.
to give our listeners one last opportunity to where can they find you and what can we expect coming up in terms of, are there any interesting articles you've got ready to come up on the College Football UK View?
Well, I'm looking forward to at some point start writing about some football. That would be good. So I plan to do that. But yeah, come and follow me on Twitter on at CFB UK View. So I'm reasonably active on there, and obviously the blog itself, collegefootballukview.com. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of these, like I said, basic breakdowns, but then now I'm starting to build it up in terms of more interesting stuff. So I've talked a lot about a lot of what we've talked about on there. And yeah, keen to start getting back into teams and some more football related content. So I'll be doing that as we get closer to the season. But yeah, great to be on again. Always a pleasure to talk to you, gents. So thanks for having me on.
Lovely. Nick,
Yeah,
Patriots touchback came back yesterday, didn't it?
it did. Yeah, we had a few months off. You know, various reasons, people not being in the right place at the right time, and not much going on. But we came back, and we will be week in, week out now, all the way to um end of the season and onwards. So yeah,
It is our favourite podcast on the AAW network that covers the Patriots.
that is true.
Yeah, it's my
It is.
favourite Patriots podcast that's on the AAW network. I absolutely agree with that statement.
I
But
would
no,
actually say, for me, it's my favorite Patriots podcast on any network.
well, you would say that you're biased. Um, no, I completely agree with you there. It is the best Patriots podcast on the planet. Um, I would agree. So, if you are also looking for New England Patriots content, go. Someone probably just thought it was like a really patriotic podcast. No, it's New England Patriots, by the way. Not political in any way, shape, or form. It is purely about the New England Patriots. Please make sure you do go and check out the New England, the Patriots Touchback podcast as well, also on the AEW network, and also featuring. Do you know what? I never get enough of that face in my week. So now it's back on a
Thanks.
Tuesday night. I'm just,
That's what all the girls say as well.
I don't care what the girls say. Um, it's just I care what I say. But with that in mind, okay, go into the description of the episode. If you're on audio only, it'll be in your app. If you're on YouTube, it will be right just past Adam right there. Go to the link in the description. Follow us on social media. Follow the AAW on social media. Follow Adam on social media. Follow Nick. And after all, you've done all of that, you may as well give me a follow as well. I just be nice. Give me a sympathy one. It's fine. Come and argue with me about something. I'm always down to argue. And also come and join us on our Discord as well. We'd love to have you and hopefully join the college football season, apart from week 0, unless someone else wants to do it instead. We'll be doing some of those watch parties again, which would be really, really nice. I think we had some really good ones last year, and hopefully we'll have more people. So come and join in time for that. We'll see you next week when we're going to start our previews of the Power Four conferences. I believe it's the Big Ten and the Big 12 that we're going to talk about next week. And then in 3 weeks' time, we're doing the ACC and the SEC. But in between that, we've got another returning guest to talk about the group of 5. That'd be Joe Longren, Nick's friend.
Well,
I was very excited. So next 3 weeks are going to be all previews of conferences, and we cannot wait. See you then, and yeah, hopefully come and argue with me. That'd be really nice.